I'm Michael Humel from Culture of the Senses, and I'm sitting here with Michael Kimm and Amy Leigh from the Downtown Theater Group. We are going to be talking about their new group, their fundraiser, and what they hope to happen in the theater scene in Las Vegas. I first want to thank you guys for coming to meet me here. And
thank you. Thank you.
My first question is, what is the Downtown Theater Group, and how did the idea for the group come?
Take that?
Okay.
All right. The idea came up in 2012. It brought to my attention that Downtown Project was looking to develop a black box space in downtown Vegas. We put together a proposal for them. We put together a video. We submitted to their small business arm, and we heard back immediately. And we started to work with them for a few months before sort of petered out, and it became clear that we were too big and too different from anything that they were building downtown, and so we just sort of went off on our own from there, and there really wasn't anything that we had to give to one another at that point.
And the original idea of how, Amy says that it was too big and it was too different from anything they were looking to do down there. The idea that we came up with the assistance of Sean Critchfield, who was one of the original collaborators on this project with us, was a 300 to 400 seat, equity caliber, convertible community art space that could house any type of performance, a theater that could be set up in any configuration. So you want to do something in a false proscenium, great. In a thrust, great. In the round, great. Corner boxed or alleyway, great. Any way you could imagine to use a big empty box with 400 seats at your disposal, you could set it up to work that way. And we wanted to be able to bring sort of three missions to that space. The first, for there to be a mid-sized space in Vegas that could be a place for equity touring productions to come to, that aren't going to fill Reynolds Hall in the Smith Center. That includes a bunch of straight theater and a bunch of small musicals. Second, we wanted to be, this was our primary focus when we first started talking about the project, was to be a home for all the homeless theater companies in Las Vegas. Because as we know, there are over 60 different performing arts groups here, and only...
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, there are a lot of them. We didn't know that either until we started researching this project and discovered there were a lot more companies that were largely inactive, some of them, but still here, and their networks and their boards were still here waiting for the opportunity to produce work. So to be a home for all those companies, of course, is our second mission. And the third is to offer a huge number of educational programming and opportunities, not just for students here in town, but adults as well, to build the next generation of artists and art appreciators here in Vegas.
Tell me a little bit about your fundraiser, what you hope to do.
Okay, so our Indiegogo fundraiser is up and running, and it has been for 2 weeks now. We were looking to raise, and we are looking to raise 30Ks in 30 days. The idea for that $30,000 is very, very specific, and that's to bring on philanthropic services to assist us in raising the estimated $7.2 million that we'll need to open this facility that we've designed. As beautiful as Amy is, and as obnoxious as I am, and loud, we could pound the pavement for 30 years, the two of us, doing nothing but fundraising, and never raise the money.
So we might as well just bring in the big guns. They're professionals. This is what they do. They've given us very optimistic odds of being able to reach that. In fact, I believe they said that will be no problem.
It will be no problem was their exact words. That the
$30,000 for big wigs, I would.
Oh no, the 7.2 million.
Oh really?
Yeah, they said this is not going to be a problem.
Yeah,
here, that the money is here.
They could reach that in around a year's time.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the $30,000 holds them on retainer essentially for the first 5 months of doing marketability, feasibility, and starting our major gifts campaign.
So this $30,000 allows us to raise the rest of the money, and for it to not be, we can't crowdfund $8 million. There's no reason.
It will never happen.
No.
Yes, it won't.
The $30,000 guarantees that we can raise that money elsewhere without having to directly ask people for it.
Okay.
Yep.
on the board, and how will you decide that?
Okay, so this is actually a more interesting question than maybe you realize, because I would have to follow up with which board, and then I'll explain that question. Because there's going to be a dual board structure going on here. We're going to have an executive board, which all nonprofits have, and then we're going to have an artistic board, and these are going to be separate entities. There's going to be probably one individual that overlaps on both, but these are almost entirely separate entities that have entirely different jobs. So the executive board's job, of course, will be to sort of shape the overarching mission and make sure that that mission goals of our space and of our organization are being met. Those people right now consist of the two of us and some other founding members, including Sean Critchfield, Drew Yanomori, an associate of ours named Leland Rost, who's been a music educator for 15 years. Each of those people will largely be replaced once this is all up and running by people that have, or representatives of people that have made major financial gifts. These are going to be community members that have clout and status and positions in the community to reach out and assist us in areas that we don't have expertise. So it is very likely that we'll have members of that executive board that are in media, that are in government, that are in higher education, that are in business.
That are in law.
Right.
That are in
Specialities that we just don't have.
Yeah.
And the way that they are going to get on that board is through sort of financial donation and showing that they care very much about what we're doing and essentially putting their money where their mouth is.
And they're personally invested at this point.
Exactly.
They want us to succeed.
Yeah, because if they've already donated, they want it.
Yeah, they don't want us to be a flop.
Exactly. They want it to work, and that gives them a say in making sure that we stick true to what we said we're going to do. And that's how most boards are set up. That's how Super Summer Theater's executive board is set up. That's how the Smith Center's board is set up, and so on. The more exciting thing, I think, for your listeners and for the rest of the artistic community is the notion of this artistic board that we hope to set up, which is going to be controlling and discussing and being in charge of what goes into the space, how the community is going to then use the space for the benefit of the community. And the way that board is going to be set up season after season is that representatives from all of the companies that are producing shows in the space for the current season will be on. They'll have representation on the artistic board, who will then review all the submissions from the community to go into the space the next year. And so that artistic board will make, which is all from the community, will make the selections of what then will go into the community art space the next year.
So it's a 1-year term limit for all of the current production teams for that season.
Now that doesn't mean that, of course, a production company can't do a show, say, in 2018 and then turn around and do a show in 2019. It just means that it removes the cronyism aspect or the potential cronyism aspect of it. It's not just Amy and me sitting up there going, well, this year I would like to do all these shows, and look, here are all of our friends. We'll let them do shows in the space. And then next year, we'll let them do shows in the space again, and we'll ignore the people we don't like. No, this ensures that whoever has the best artistic ideas from our community year after year get their representation in the space. Exactly, yeah.
Will the theater companies be renting your space? How will the theater make money, and will it be just by ticket sales and donations?
Do you want to handle this one?
Partially. Ticket sales is a portion of our income. The other portion is actually our educational classes. The classes can help keep ticket sales low, and the ticket sales can help, like if we sell out and have a good season, then we can maybe subsidize some other classes and give some more options. But then us being a nonprofit, we'll always have the donation window open, always have to roll over. And that's part of being a nonprofit. A portion of your income has to come from donations. Doesn't even mean monetary donations. It could just be
Gifts in kind.
Gifts in kind, and recognizing that our ticket sales, our ticket prices, we aim to never be over $40, regardless of what's in the space.
And when Amy says classes, she doesn't just mean sort of come in for your 9 weeks and have classrooms, not classes. We will have those, but she's really talking about the entire educational programming side to this, which is mine and I've designed, and I've actually been designing in my head for 10 years. There are lots of things that go into that. They include educational theater, touring out to schools like the one we're sitting in right now here at Cimmaron Memorial, or elementary schools, and bringing professional teaching artists to students, both for performance and for curricular reasons, both before and after said performance. It involves a youth theater company. They're in our house. They're in the space once it's developed, and then shows that run through those that will be in both auxiliary spaces and main stage spaces in that facility. They involve savings that come about from bringing on interns that have recently finished master's programs for design, for lighting and for sets and for costumes and makeup, and bringing those almost professionals in, those that have the sort of professional education but not yet the professional credentials, and other ways that we have a lot of money coming that way. We also, of course, like any nonprofit, will be in a constant state of grant writing, both for annual recurring grants and for one-time specialty grants and new specialty programs. So yes, ticket sales will fund a portion of it. I think it's somewhere around 70% gets covered that way, and the other 30% gets covered through education and through grant writing.
Okay.
And so the other question that you asked is how will rentals work? Rentals will work one of two ways. If it's an outside production coming in, and when I say outside production, I mean one of the smaller productions from Seattle or New York or LA. If they just want to utilize our space, we would need them to be a box production, and that they would just pay us a flat fee, and then we would give them the ticket sales back in return.
Yep. So in that case, yeah. So then we're just a standard rental house, just like the Smith Center is. For the companies though that are here in town, that are the local arts organizations, then there's not a rental setup. Then we're not asking for any money up front. In fact, we'll put up all of the money up front. We will act as the Downtown Theater Group operating inside of this space will act as the co-producing entity. And we will take all the financial risk, and we will handle all of the budgeting and free up the creative staff of company X, Y, or Z to design their sort of the best version of their show they can. And then when the show is all done, what's budgeted is 20% of the total revenue goes back out to the companies, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it ends up being something like $165,000 a year.
That they can use to pay their actors and their staff.
And develop new work, and
if they're saving up to open a space of their own, it can go towards that.
So it's a lot of money that we're pumping then back out to those companies without them having to put up any risk to begin with. So.
Okay. Do you have anyone else working in the theater, or will be working in the theater, or will it just be the two of you at the start?
Well, out of the start, yes. And when I say out at the beginning, this is before the doors open. That we have to be on staff slightly before anything's up and running to make sure that the space gets built, to make sure that everything gets moved in, the tech gets moved in, everything's constructed correctly.
The timeline kind of for hiring on full-time staff would be Amy would come on first, and that would need to happen essentially once the first major gift is gotten through the major gifts campaign, because then the financial services company needs someone that they can be in contact with literally at any hour, any day, that can always be fielding the questions that have to do with money. So Amy would be the first one in that regard, just to handle the business and financial side of stuff from the onset. The plan then was to bring me on as the artistic director once the ground was broken. So once the ground is broken on the facility, wherever that is, whenever that is, it would be about 9 months to a year out from when we would hope to open doors, and then everything has to be set up, of course, in that span of time. So then educational programming and the sort of the specifics of it need to be set up, and sort of all the outreach to all the schools and community partners has to happen. The season has to get set up. You have to get all of your initial equipment bought and in, and then I would end up being the person that's on the ground working hand in hand with all of the architects and designers to make sure that the design is executed in a way that is fitting for all of us.
And there are additionally 2 other positions, which would be educational director and technical director.
And the TD would come, and they would come out essentially at the same time, probably 3 to 5 months out, once a lot of groundwork had been laid, the tech director to come in and to oversee the finishing of the space itself and its equipment. So rather than having just come in and looking at the hard building of the space, they'd be in to make sure that the stage and risers and seats are installed correctly, and that all of the power is set up correctly, and the dimmers are set up correctly, and the grid and the lighting and the sound. So they'd be for that portion, and then the educational director would come on at the same time to start hiring in the teachers for the first semester and to find teaching artists for touring, and to familiarize themselves and take over the educational programming aspects from me at that point.
And I would hire a front of house staff.
Yeah, so that might grow in time as we expand our programming after that first year. But yeah, the plan is that
It started from
the day of doors, starting with the doors open, starting day one, of being open to the public, it would be four full times.
Okay. Good start. There will be theater and an educational space. Talk to me about a little bit what we will be teaching.
What we'll be teaching?
Yeah.
So directly through classes, we'll have a whole sort of spectrum of theatrical and technical classes. That technical side is what really excites me, because I think that we can all agree that that's the aspect of stuff in our community that's lacking. We have an overabundance of immensely talented actors, directors, and artists. And we have a shortage of skilled carpenters, set designers, electricians, lighting designers, and
Costume builders.
Costumers, makeup artists, and so on, right? So that's where the big breach is, I think, in between. But in terms of just straight classes, we'll have different levels of acting for everything from 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, sort of creative play classes, up through the beginning sort of acting and dramatic choices stuff for elementary students, into true acting classes for middle and high school students at all levels, and then acting classes for adults as well. We'll have things like stage combat classes, again, at various levels. We'll have character studies, mostly, again, for sort of high school and beyond.
And the youth productions as well.
Yeah, and then, of course, so we'll have, then, of course, our youth production as well, but that's not directly in our sort of course syllabi. We'll do things like stage combat, which I already said. We'll do things like special effects makeup classes. Or we'll do things like, again, on the technical side, carpentry for stage classes, where we can bring people in that want to learn, okay, how does that set get built? Or someone, this could be just someone from a community that already has a carpentry background that's like, or has some way around tools and wants to see how that can apply in the arts world. Or it could be an artist that wants to say, okay, I want to know how to, in my own space or in the space that I'm renting in the Onyx or, the art square or whatever, where I know that I'm going to be doing a show later on, I want to get some more hands-on know-how from these people that have studied this in college of how to better build these sorts of things. Basic lighting design classes, up through intermediate lighting design classes, or special effects makeup classes, and really we are gonna play it very much by ear and see where the high demand is.
Okay.
And of course, we'll always be able to shift quarter to quarter, semester to semester, offering to offering of what exactly it is that we're putting out there in the syllabus. It's not going to be this static locked thing that we're just going to say, these are what we got, and we're going to listen actively to the community and see what the community really needs and what their educational needs are.
Are you going to be charging for those classes, or are they going to be free?
Yes, they are going to be. We can't just give them.
Oh, I figured that.
Yes, there's pricing there. The exact dollar amounts are not things that we know now.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say is that they will be incredibly equitable, and they will be cheaper than the vast majority of classes that you would find. No, I mean college. I mean, if you look around at the little studio stuff that's being offered around town, in a number of different places, ours will be cheaper. They'll be similar in cost to that is of the stuff that's being offered right now by Rainbow Company, which if you break it down sort of hourly, turns into somewhere between $10 and $20 an hour depending on the class, which is a steal. I mean, it's a fantastic deal compared to a lot of the other sort of arts education entities and studios in town, where that number usually is between $60 and $75 an hour.
Wow.
So. And we're able to keep our class prices low because it's not just a teaching facility, it's also an operating theater as well. So that's not all of our revenue doesn't need to come from class.
Yeah, so it's not like that's the only.
And it's also going to be supported again by some really fantastic grants that we're already starting to stick our fingers into at both the national and state levels, and from a lot of different endowments that really push for really strong educational programs, especially for communities at risk, and especially at high risk in high risk areas, which Las Vegas qualifies as for a lot of things. So yeah, we are able to subsidize those.
Okay. Okay. What do you think of the Las Vegas scene and like right now, well, theaters?
That's a broad question. I think both of us probably have different opinions on that.
I think so.
Go ahead.
Yours would be different
You can
from
both answer.
mine because this is my 4th year having been in Las Vegas. I moved here at a time when Cockroach was just petitioning to get their space open.
Okay.
And there was very few options in town. I also left, I also got here at the same time that space at the plaza went away for various reasons. So there was a lot happening in very different ways. I feel like a lot of that is settled down though. A lot of that I feel might be due to the loss of spaces, and the loss of opportunity. That I moved here and there were all kinds of companies that were currently in swing and no longer have any place to do their work. So they've just been sitting, I guess, quietly waiting for better days. That I felt like I moved here at a really good time and there was a lot happening.
What year was it?
2012.
Okay.
I moved here for the Fringe Festival of 2012 is when I moved here. That's when I met you.
Yeah. That's when I started in the theater like scene in 2012, and as I was coming in Sergo was going out.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's when, and that's
Yep.
my sort of.
I don't think I was ever in town the same day as John. I think we just passed
only
each
heard of
other.
him.
Yeah, me too.
I
But you've been here long-
I
you've
know
been here much
John.
longer.
I know John pretty well, or I knew John pretty well while he was here. This is year 11 for me. When I was first here, and Sergo had not settled back down yet. I think the year after I got here is when Sean Critchfield and John Mean walked back into the Onyx Theater's back room, or the Rack's back room, and discovered there was a 100-seat theater back there. So in Sergo they had been functioning in California, but they hadn't really done anything here yet. When I got here, it was very quiet. Yeah, very, very quiet. And I got to see kind of the huge swell of new stuff that happened kind of between 2009 and 2012, with Sergo leading the way, and it looked like we were unstoppable, and we felt unstoppable, and that was a great feeling. The Onyx had its doors open to everybody, and John and then all of his subsequent artistic directors were able to just throw all this sort of cool stuff in there, but everyone was so hungry that while some of the things didn't land, it felt like a lot of stuff just kept growing and growing and getting better and better. The Bastard was open for business, of course, on the other side of Commercial Center, and while it was a really rough space, Sergo did a lot of really good stuff over there. And I'm with Amy in that I feel like kind of since their departure and sort of the loss of the Bastard, the loss of the plaza space, the sort of loss of the little equity spaces that were in Town Square and down in the Green Valley, and the loss largely of the Onyx. I mean, Troy has absolutely saved that space, but he's also filled it with the season he wants every year, which is totally his prerogative. That Table 8 kind of lives there now, and that's totally fine. I mean, he's saved the space, and that's a great thing. We absolutely needed that. But it's just one more sandbox that's been taken away, and so I'm with Amy in that we have 5 companies essentially that have spaces they function in, and 50 companies sitting around twiddling their thumbs, waiting for the opportunity to be able to put on full seasons again. Yeah.
And these are companies like Portraits, Players, and Public Fit that do great work, but they're not going to be able to afford the Summerlin Library or the Troche Studio.
The Troche Studio in Smith Center.
Which are some of the few available spaces, but they're only available at a outrageous price point.
one thing I've noticed in the 4 years I've been watching theater is like, I like the acting better than the material.
Than the material that's being chosen, you mean?
Yeah. Do you agree or do you disagree, or how do you think about acting change?
Largely by how we're going to run it. Through our artistic board will accept submissions from anyone and everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll sit down with everything we've gotten over the last year and pick only the best of what's given to us to fill our space. That it's not going to be people who have pet projects, that it's not going to be something that we just threw in to fill space that we don't particularly care about. That it's we're going to select our shows so carefully, and from not only an artistic aspect but from a commercial aspect as well, is that we want to give people what they want and sell tickets.
And we'll be building seasons that are balanced in that regard. Like, it's not like we're just, we're thinking about what's going to be commercially viable to keep our doors open. It's like, okay, we're going to balance the season out where, okay, if we're going to choose to do something that's more experimental, that's a bit more off the wall, and may not have as much sort of external appeal, although it may gain it as it's sitting in the space and people talk about how great it is, we'll balance the risks with things that we're more certain are going to be successful commercially so that you can maintain your seasons year after year. But then there's also, which is something we haven't talked to a lot about in other aspects, is that it's not like there's just going to be one season.
Yeah.
The great thing, I think one of the things that isn't being tapped as well as it could be in all of the small theaters that already exist here in town is that most of them sit dark most of the time. And we're not going to do that.
Yeah,
we're going to have...
The only one that's like constant is the Onyx. Really.
Was the Onyx, even the Onyx is...
Right.
Yeah.
There's a main stage show and then there's an after-hours show. It's our goal to unlock the doors at 10 a.m. and that it's filled until after midnight.
That would make a difference.
Yeah, pretty much every day. We're
Yeah.
basically setting Monday and Tuesday dark, so that Wednesday through Sunday, you've got classes going on in the classroom and in the studio and even in the performance space during the day. And then you might, just because of small rental contract stuff, someone wants to come in and have an event at 3 p.m. in the main space in the afternoon, and then you have rehearsal going on in the rehearsal space while you have your main stage show going on, starting at when you open your doors to let your actors in at 6 and you're up at 8, and then you have your midnight show on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or what have you, where maybe once a week it's improv, and then once a week it's stand-up stuff, and then maybe you run a new play series every year that has its own sort of its own late night slot or alternate slot. We're calling them not necessarily late night, the alternate seasons. So that, and maybe then you're able to do, so there's demand for a little studio piece and there's nothing going on in the classroom here at night. Okay, so we'll have a basic tech setup in the studio, in the classroom space, converted into a little studio, so that while the main stage thing is going on, you can have 40 people up for a stage reading or someone's little pet project, upstairs in the classroom. And we're pushing so that it's never dark. It's always good, so it always can be utilized by someone for something at a price point that makes sense for someone at all times. Because while it's sitting there dark, not only is it of no use to your community, you're not making any money then that way either. No revenues coming in, and
I get that.
Yeah. So,
at your fundraiser party, I was talking to Amy, and you were had your ideas about what you wanted to name the theater and that space. Talk to me a little bit about John Abenhoff and Russell Royce Walkman and what they meant to you and what they meant to the theater community.
I'm gonna let you take.
You're gonna let me take it, John. Okay. So, for those who don't know who Johnny was, Johnny Ivanhoff was an absolutely beloved performer and artist here in the Las Vegas performance community, and he worked for over 20 years. I don't know exactly how long he was here, but it was for more than 20. It was for a very long time that he was involved on strip and off strip, and largely in the last 15 years here in the community and growing the community arts here with every company that there is. I'm sure he had worked with everybody here in town at some point or other, and he passed away unexpectedly in 2013, shortly after completing his run of Cuckoo's Nest, which was his last show here in town, which I had the honor of working with him on. John wasn't just an amazing artist, he was an absolutely amazing man. Warm and gentle and kind and talented and honest and just a wonderful, wonderful human being. And while naming something after him might not be, the greatest honor that could be bestowed upon him, it's something that we can do, and it's something that after he did pass away was very quickly brought up and discussed. That
meaningful.
Yes, and then just because he's meant so much to all of us, we think that it only fitting that the facility bear his name.
And I met Russell Slothman when I came here in 2012 in a production of Bad Head. And I never found anyone quite so beloved as Russell.
I know Russell from even before that, even before he did that, he was in his first show here in town was Evil Dead the Musical, in the very original cast in the Onyx, which I was also part of that show. And I totally agree with what Amy just said. Just such a young, energetic light of a human being, always so happy and so positive and it was infectious. You walk into rehearsal and be having an awful day, and you'd see Russell and you couldn't be upset anymore. You couldn't do it. He was such a phenomenal young man.
I never met John or Russell. I saw Russell in Cabaret. I was at the last show, and then I had never met either one. I wanted to, but I didn't get to.
But that he died tragically at 21 is such a blow. It's sort of unimaginable. But that he was such a absolutely optimistic force. I'm not sure where I would want to put his name in the space, but I know I wanted to put it somewhere. I want to attach it to something.
Yeah, absolutely.
A little bit of immortality.
Yeah. And while they are just gestures,
They're from the heart.
yeah, and they're the best that we can do. So.
In your mind, after you build your space and are getting started going, talk to me a little bit about what you picture your perfect theater scene to be like in Las Vegas.
Perfect theater scene?
Yeah, as a whole.
For all of Las Vegas in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a whole.
Okay.
And include your theater space too also.
Okay.
Well, part of our long-term goals is to collect seed money for other theaters in the hopes of creating a theater row in the Arts District.
Okay.
So to clarify what Amy just said there, as a nonprofit entity, right, it's not like we're raking in cash to line our pockets, right? This is never going to be the case. And there is profit built into our models. Like everything that I've laid out says that there is a fair amount of money that would be essentially return on investment for us laying all of this down. Now, where do we want that potential investment to go? Well, we want it to go back to the companies that are going to be the things that are making our space great. So over time, 12 to 15 years out, once we can establish this fully, we're going to have a full development trust that is going to allow us to be a grant-making organization in the future, in hopes that we can help to sponsor hopefully Poor Richard's Players has a space before we get to this point.
We're talking about 10, 15 years down the road.
But down the line, the companies that come to us year after year with the very best of ideas and have grown the very most and have the best sort of plans for the future and goals and missions that closely align to ours, we're going to be able to act as a granting organization and give them seed money to start their own financing and fundraising. Give them seed money to help convert a small space also downtown with us, and as Amy said, build a theater row, because that's what was required to really drive the cultural and artistic growth out of the major commercial centers in New York and LA and Chicago and Houston and the Twin Cities and Seattle. You needed that. You needed a concentrated performing arts center, right? I don't mean center like a facility. I mean a center of a community that had a string of small facilities. That's how a hub. That's how off Broadway worked, and that's how the Second City movement worked in Chicago, and that's how the Hollywood the Hollywood Row system worked, right? In LA, and we want to have that here, and we want to be the point of the spear when it comes to that in time. So what do we see after we're up and running and pushing on? We see, and what we'd want is a ton of fantastic companies that have their own spaces and don't need our facility for that anymore. So that we can continue to be the space for new emerging artists and new emerging companies, and we can continue to help them grow up to become a part of an ever-growing Las Vegas art scene.
Tell me a little bit about yourselves as far as your theater background. I know you're a producer, you're an actor. What you've done before and how you started.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
I can go first.
Okay.
This is year 20 of being involved in my theater background. I worked professionally in small theaters on Hollywood Boulevard for 10 years. I've been president of a nonprofit theater company in Santa Barbara. I've developed new works in Santa Barbara. I also renovated spaces there. I've produced on Broadway. I moved here as commissioned to run a production show on the Strip in 2012. So that's why I'm here now. I've always been on the opposite side of acting, about management and administration and money and all that stuff that I feel like isn't artistically necessary, that I don't want the director to worry about. I don't want the artist to worry about. So I like to say that I enable artists to make art. Thank you.
And I'm the flip side of all that. I'm the one that's been and had his fingers in making all of the art, both on stage and backstage, since for a very long time now. I guess this is year 28 of being a professional artist. I was a professional singer at 6, actor at 9, technician at 14, stuntman at 16. I went to New York University, where I got essentially a double major in theater performance and education in 3.5 years. I started designing educational programs while I was still in college. In the program of study that I had there, I, after graduation, worked as a lighting designer and as a carpenter and a little bit of technical direction work for some specialty shows, as well as some substantial shows there in New York City. I have a couple of off-Broadway credits, a whole lot of off-Broadway credits, and a very good number of educational credits in the city itself. Let's see. I'm also a professional rock climber, or I was once upon a time. That's what took me out of the city in late 2005. I went on a climbing road trip across the country, met more cool people here in Las Vegas than anywhere else, and so I came here in early 2006. And I've been a theater teacher since I've come here. So then I've also looked from the official side in the classroom and budgeting and production, and I've acted as a director here and in other places around town too. And I think in these 10 years I've worked with pretty much everyone in every space that I can find. So,
is there anything we didn't cover or that you want to talk about?
I would like to say that if you guys would like to donate to our campaign, all of that information can be found through our website at www.downtowntheatregroup.com. And the link to our Indiegogo page is in there, as is a bunch of other information about our project, and a direct donation link for once the campaign closes on April 5th.
Thank you, Michael.
Appreciate it so much.
Thank you for coming out. Those are some good questions.
Yeah.